So, coming from that particular note, now I get to talk about my favorite book of this particular month. So, for the sixth book that I read in the month of October, I actually read Hollow by Shannon Waters, Brandon Boyer White, and Bernice Nell. And I actually have, so this is what it looks like. Unfortunately, the back of this was slightly damaged in terms of stuff. I hate the fact that it got bent, but it's such a pretty cover. And the artwork in this is actually really beautiful. If you look at the character designs and things like that, it's actually so pretty. And with respect to the coloring and the character designs, I really enjoyed every part of this graphic novel. So, briefly about what it's about, this is a sapphic retelling of the legend of Sleepy Hollow. In it, we have Isabel, aka Izzy Crane, who is the main character, who is moving to the town of Sleepy Hollow and essentially starting like over at a new school and having new life after her parents are relocated to the town of Sleepy Hollow. I believe her mom is cooking for like a business and her own business, and essentially Izzy has to get used to being in Sleepy Hollow, like essentially being a town where like there are a lot of tourists and who are attached to the lore of the headless horseman. Izzy learns really quickly that people are obsessed with the headless horseman, and she ends up meeting two characters who play a prominent role and who end up becoming her friends in terms of events in the novel. There is um, Croc, who is kind of a prankster and a jock and like kind of a lovable himbo, if I can say that. Like in terms of stuff, he's really funny. And there's also Vicky Von Tassel, who is essentially considered like royalty, like in the scheme of things for the town of Sleepy Hollow, because she is a part of the family who is said to be affected by the curse of the headless horseman, and events essentially like that. Like a lot of bad things have happened to her family and her stuff, and so she plays along with the lore of the town in terms of her family name and stuff like that. But she's not exactly happy about it, and she wants to carve out her own identity. So essentially, this comic is an exploration of different events, like not just Izzy getting used to the town and essentially interacting with both Vicky and Croc, but also looking into the string of mysterious events, whether or not like the headless horseman is actually a thing, and what the cause of a lot of like unexplained events that are happening to Vicky and other people in town in terms of what's going on in Sleepy Hollow. So essentially, this comic is a graphic novel is an exploration of that, and I really enjoyed not only the artwork and also the overarching storyline, but the chemistry of the characters is just very on point. Like it's so adorable, and I love like being able to get to know the characters and being able to see them work through these things. Even the headless horseman, who ends up actually being real, much to Izzy's surprise, is very adorable in the way that the horseman and also the horse itself is portrayed. And then you're not sure, like Izzy and her friends are not exactly sure in terms of who the mastermind of these mysterious events but they end up finding out as they put the pieces together, and they devised different schemes and things to be able to not only stop the evil but also like root it out. So I really enjoyed every part of this particular graphic novel. When I picked it up from my indie bookstore, I remember hearing from the cashier. I was like, "Oh, you've got a very interesting story, like to be able to read," and it was perfect for spooky season. It was perfect for being able to get something that was in the spirit of reading while also having like harrowing stakes and being able to get to know the characters. So I would definitely love to read more in this universe and more from these particular authors. I gave this a 5 out of 5 stars. It is one of my favorite graphic novels. And so this is Hollow by Shannon Waters, Brendan Boyer White, and Bernice Now. The next novel I want to feature is a YA novel, and this is, I would not say that this is particularly like a scary entry, like in terms of like, YA horror, but I would say that there's definitely like writing in this that is evocative and creepy. And it's a very unique exploration of grief from the perspective of two POC characters who are featured prominently in the book and are the main characters, but also the fact that it revolves around a very unique take on zombies. This is The Undead Truth of Us by Brittany S. Lewis, and I actually really enjoyed this book, both for the cover as well as the events within. So essentially, this particular novel, without going into too many spoilers, is about Zari, aka Z, who has recently lost her mom. And when you first look at events like when the novel starts, she sees her mom slowly transforming into a zombie, and she does not know why. Like, and it happens in the days before she passes away, but yet nobody else seems to know it but her. Like in terms of her mother's zombification, and she essentially is sent to live with her aunt in the aftermath of events. Like she's traumatized by the fact that like she saw her mom zombify, but she doesn't know why it happened, or like in terms of what the process of that was. So like when she essentially moves to this new town, she has to kind of like deal with both the grief of the loss of her mom, but also seeing these very terrifying images of her death and having to grapple with that. But it's not even just that. When she moves to this new town, she ends up meeting a kid named Bo who's around her age, who she sees is also a half zombie. Like, and she seems to be the only person who sees his transformation between being a normal kid and then being this zombie version of himself, where his skin is decaying and she can see inside his skull and things like that. And the imagery of it is really creepy and terrifying. You can feel Z's terror as she's trying to grapple with it, and she doesn't understand, why she is essentially seeing like zombies in the people around her, and especially with respect to Bo. And so this novel essentially looks at how she tries to figure out like why she's able to see zombies, and also having to deal with the aftermath of her mother in terms of what happened leading up to her mom's death, and also having to grapple with like the um, also having to grapple with respect to her broken family and her relationship with her birth father, who has been estranged and who essentially is a part of her life, but she has to grapple with those events, as well as the old relationships she left behind when she moved after her mom passed away, and then also having to deal with a strained relationship with her aunt, who isn't exactly happy that Z is actually living with her, and also trying to deal with the coping with the loss of her sister. So there's a lot of different emotions and a lot of different things that are going on in this particular novel, and you follow both Z as well as Bo in terms of the events and how those two end up becoming closer, and essentially getting a response in terms of why Z is able to see the zombification of people around her. So I thought that this was a very unique take on zombification, and essentially the way that the novel explores, it's not so much like the typical zombie novel that you see like in terms of people dying and then reanimating, but it's more like she's able to perceive things in terms of like the zombification and stuff like that, like being a parallel with having to deal with trauma and grief, and then also looking at different difficult events. So the way that zombification is done in this novel as a way to make parallels with grief and and death and things like that was so well done and very unique that I appreciated where it was coming from, and I really liked following both the characters of Z and Bo in this particular novel. Your primary perspective is Z, but you also get to see like places where she interacts with Bo in terms of getting an insight into his life in terms of the things that he's dealing with and why she's able to see like his zombification as well. So I definitely enjoyed this novel for what it chose to do. I gave this 3.5 stars out of 5, particularly because there were certain moments where like it did feel like the pacing of the novel was a little bit sluggish, but for the moments that where it hit hard, it hit very hard, and I could definitely relate to Z in terms of having experiencing the death of a parent and also being thrust into a new environment and being able to see her emotions and her grapple with a lot of difficult things was really heartening to be able to learn about and hear about. So I enjoyed this. Give it 3.5 out of 5 stars. It was definitely one of my favorite reads from the month of October, and I found it very valuable to read. And that is The Undead Truth of Us by Brittany S. Lewis. So I will be very brief for the last 3 books that I read in the month of October. The first one is actually an adult romance that is um, noted as erotica, and it is a novella. And this is one that I've had ever since 2013 as a NetGalley ARC. And so I finally had the opportunity to be able to read it since it was such a short read, and since I also had it as an audiobook. So this is The Seduction Hypothesis by Delphine Dryden. And this is the second book in a series of novellas where it explores different couples, and like even though it is a part of a series, it can be read as a standalone. So essentially, this particular novella centers around 2 people, Ben and Lindsay, who have since broken up and have an estranged relationship. Though Ben desperately wants to get Lindsay back because he essentially loves her and wants to do anything that he can do to be able to get back with her. But the two of them are kind of in forced proximity because they're going to this nerd conference with a bunch of colleagues. And essentially, Lindsay is kind of like cosplaying, role playing as kind of a popular character, who is, I believe, a dominatrix, if I remember correctly. Like, and she has the red hair and everything else, and like, she's basically trying out different things, like in terms of exploring, like having a more sensual experience within. I believe it is a novella that explores BDSM. So essentially, she is exploring all of this, but then Ben is left behind. So he, in the spectrum of trying to get her back, he asks around, say like, what can I do to earn her on trust? What can I do to get her back? And so essentially, he learns of what she wants to explore, and so he tries to study up as much as he can, and like tries to see what he can do to like win her back in terms of taking on a new persona and things like that, and like exploring intimacy with her in that respect. But the issue that I had with this particular novella like isn't the fact that it's like short in terms of like exploring the relationship. I understood what the main conflict was and how they essentially have to get back together and things like that. I think um for me, like this particular, like it explores a trope that I don't really like in terms of miscommunication or lack of communication. There were times when I really just wanted to say, Ben, just talk to Lindsay, like, and tell her what's going on. And then with Lindsay, I wanted to say, just talk to him about what you want. Like, and that was a frustrating experience with me in terms of seeing the relationship trying to repair. So like it's that miscommunication trope, like in terms of how things were in terms of, and it touches base on like that miscommunication and piece in terms of them realizing, oh, I need to act, maybe I need to actually talk to him or her, depending on like the situation that they were in order to express what they wanted out of the relationship and like how they broke up and things like that. So I I thought it was fine, but it really wasn't one of my favorite stories, like in terms of this particular genre, or for the fact that like it did what it did with its particular trope in this novella. So I gave this overall I think 2.5 out of 5 stars because I enjoyed the audiobook narration for it. I did genuinely enjoy like the couple themselves in terms of stuff, but I just felt like it didn't do enough to be able to stay with me, and the miscommunication piece didn't really appeal to me in terms of like being the centralized conflict for this particular novella. I did think that the cover of it was really cute. Like, and that was one of the things that like really attracted me when I first requested this as a galley from NetGalley back in 2013. But and like the fact that like also it takes place at a nerd convention and like has like two geekish people falling in love and things like that or reconnecting. But I wish that like it could have been a little bit stronger in terms of having like a particular resonance with me. I thought it was fine, but I think it could have even been better than what it was. So that is The Seduction Hypothesis by Delphine Dryden. So last two books that I'm going to feature are actually by the same author. One is a reread. That is The Year of the Witching by Alexis Henderson. And I also read an ARC copy of House of Hunger by Alexis Henderson. And I'm going to actually do a separate video um, kind of like going through my thoughts about both of these novels in terms of the appeal, because I thought it was very appropriate that they be reads that I do in October for spooky season. So it definitely appealed to me that one of them was about a witch. So let me just kind of go through like the basic premises of both of these novels and like what my ratings were for them. So The Year of the Witching is essentially about an outcast woman named um, uh, Emmanuel. I think it's Emmanuel. Let me see. Yeah, Emmanuel. And this is the physical copy of The Year of the Witching, like just for your reference, because I have a physical copy of it, and I'm glad that I was actually able to pick this up. I read it once before, and this was my rereading of it. But to kind of give you a perspective of what it's about, this is about Emmanuel, who is considered an outcast in her town because she is the child of an illicit reunion, and her small town is very strict in terms of abiding by the rules of the prophet and like having these particular social norms. So she is trying to basically navigate this small town, really restrictive environment in terms of this, and then she ends up after a series of events being running away like into the woods and meeting the spirits of four witches who come across her and give her a gift, which is her mother's old diary. And she essentially realizes that her mother sought help from the spirits of these four witches when she ran into the forest one day, and then she realizes that her town is not exactly what it seems, and that they've been a part of a lot of like different things that have been corrupt. And she essentially tries to see if she can take matters into her own hands and rectify the wrongs that have been done. So essentially, that's the base premise of The Year of the Witching, and I actually really enjoyed this novel. It was very creepy, like the horrors that are actually described in this novel like really hit home, and I really enjoyed the characterization and the description and like the overall writing and portrayal of the story. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars, and I thought it was a really strong introduction to Alexis Henderson's work and things like that. So when House of Hunger actually came out not very long ago, like in terms of stuff, I started reading this in the month of October, specifically for spooky season. I knew that I wanted, from the strength of The Year of the Witching, I knew I wanted to read House of Hunger as soon as possible. So House of Hunger is essentially about Marion, who is a servant girl who lives with her brother in this town, and she's seeking a better life. Like her and her brother are essentially living in poverty and trying to make ends meet the way that they can. And she hears about the advertisements for blood maidens. I believe it's, yeah, blood maids. Sorry, blood maids. Who are advertised like as, like, you know, well to do, like taught like there's no experience needed for anything, like you just have to go in for an initial appointment and things like that in order to sign up. And she gets essentially, Marion gets so frustrated by like the life that she has that she doesn't think that things will change. She decides to sign up and become a blood maid, much to the chagrin of her brother and things like that. And then some traumatic events happen, and she essentially has to run to, like, her only option is to become a blood maid. So she ends up, you know, going in for the process and like trying out as a blood maid, ends up getting to the next step in the process and leaving for the House of Hunger, which she's assigned to. And essentially it goes on from there to showcase how she gets acclimated into this home, but it is not everything is as it seems. And the novel goes through, like, in terms of what she goes through. And that, I thought that this was an appropriate, like, it was a great vampire novel, and I got what I wanted, like, in terms of a gothic horror environment along with vampires and things like that from the novel. But I thought there were certain issues that I had with it, like in terms of pacing, in terms of stuff. Like, it was appealing, but it still could have been even a little bit better than what it was. It wasn't as strong as The Year of the Witching, but it was strong in its own right in terms of what it chose to do with the story. And I appreciated it for the way that it expanded upon its tropes, and also putting it in the perspective of a woman of color. So I liked it, but I wish that I could have loved it even more than what it was. So I gave this 3.5 out of 5 stars for House of Hunger. So, okay, we are done with my October wrap up. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, and subscribe to my channel and hit the notification bell if you would like to see more of my content. I really enjoyed what I was able to read in the month of October, and I enjoyed sharing my thoughts with you, if even in an expanded opportunity. I'm not 100% sure if this is going to be 2 videos or 1 video, but I hope that you enjoyed what you've seen in this video, and I hope to be able to share more wrap-ups with you soon. Thank you again, and I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next video.